Awesome. Well, hello, everyone, and thank you so much for joining us today for TEC Canada's Deeper Insights webinar. I'm Colton Esser, and I'm the Strategy and Research Supervisor here at TEC Canada, and I'm thrilled to welcome you to this exciting session. Today, we have the pleasure of hearing from Bill Bishop, a TEC Canada speaker, entrepreneur, author, keynote speaker, and innovation coach. Bill is the creator of the Big Idea Future Innovation System, which has helped over 5,000 companies worldwide to grow through advanced innovation strategies and emerging technologies like AI. He's also a digital marketing pioneer, having written the first book on the subject back in 1996. In today's session, New Factory Thinking, Create Your Big Idea for Future Business Success, Bill will share groundbreaking strategies to help you package your big ideas, attract more customers, and scale your business. Please remember, this live session is interactive, so whether you're joining us on Zoom or via TEC Canada's social media channels, please utilize the chat function and share your questions with Bill to receive personalized insights. We will have a session at the end of his presentation where he will go through each of those questions. All right, thank you for being here, and let's get ready to dive in to the future with Bill Bishop. Bill, take it away.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much for giving me this opportunity to speak. I've spoken at over 100 tech meetings, so I get to know all the tech members, and I'm always very excited to talk about this because we're going to talk about the future, and that's a topic that we don't spend enough time thinking about or working on. Most of the time, we're pretty caught up in the day-to-day present. But as you're going to see, thinking about the future as a regular habit is really one of the primary strategies that we all need to use to be successful in business these days. So it's all about the future. So let me just share my show. Let me just bring that up here. There we go. All right. And I change my, there we go. Perfect. Okay. Yeah. So I call this presentation New Factory Thinking 2030 because what I'm starting to tell my clients more and more is that we need to have that kind of time frame. We need to be thinking at least 6 years into the future because I think we could all agree that whatever happens between now and then, there's going to be a lot of change, and probably more change than we've seen in our lifetimes. We thought the internet was quite a change maker, but artificial intelligence is like the mother of all disruptors. So we really need to start thinking about the future and what that's going to look like. And there are dangers of not thinking about the future, but mostly I'm going to focus on the opportunities and all the benefits of building your future, start working on your future business. That's why I'm so excited about this, because I've seen so many people benefit from this way of thinking. So the question I want you to think about while you're listening to this is, what is your big idea for the future business of your dreams? And I add that part on of your dreams because this is truly an opportunity to build the perfect business, something that you would absolutely love to run. It would be very lucrative, but it would also be a lot of fun to run. And then when you sell the business, you could make a lot more money than selling the business that you have now. So what is that dream business that you have? And so the New Factory Thinking, which I'll explain, is a way of using our minds to be very creative to come up with that business of your dreams. So that's what I'm hoping. My intention is to help you get there. So in this presentation, I'm going to explain how to use New Factory Thinking. Those are my words, what I've come up with, as opposed to Old Factory Thinking. So how to use New Factory Thinking to build the future business of your dreams. So I'm going to explain how that works and show you how people, a lot of tech members actually have used this way of thinking to create some really incredible things. I was at a tech meeting a couple of years ago, and I met a member who had heard me speak like 10 years previously. And they said, I just sold my business for $40 million. And 10 years ago, when I heard this talk, I got this big idea for this business and I built it up and I've sold it for $40 million. So I was very happy for them that they had been able to build something incredible from this my talk here. So the benefits of this, what you're going to be thinking about is how to grow your business, get more high quality customers, generate higher profit revenues, work less, which is really good because I'm not trying to get you to work more here. I'm trying to help you work less, and actually earn passive income. How would that might happen as well? So there's lots of possibilities for you. Now, as I mentioned in the introduction, I created this system. It's called the Big Idea Future Innovation System. 25 years ago, I realized that a lot of people talk about innovation, but very few people actually innovate because they've got a lot of things standing in their way. So we created a system for helping people break through that kind of roadblock and really build new things, right? And so I'm going to talk about what that looks like. And it's all based on this notion of new factory thinking, which is a book I wrote. First edition was in 2017, and the latest edition that I wrote was in 2020. And now I'm going to write another one called the New Factory Thinker 2030. So look ahead to that one. Now, I'm going to give you a bunch of examples here of what people have done with this thinking before I even tell you what it is. But I'm going to show you what the outcomes have been, because this is going to be very inspiring and also give you ideas for your own business about what you might do. So I met Rick Goet 10 years ago in his business called Global Filtration down in Houston, Texas. And they sell these little air filters, holding it up there for airplanes to keep the air fresh in the airplanes. So that was I call his old factory, right? And he said, yeah, it's okay, but there's a lot of competition and our product is a commodity and, we're very vulnerable to disruption, So he said, I want to create a new factory. So I asked him, I said, is there something new that you could help your customers with, which were the airlines? And he said, yeah, we'd like them to find hard to find parts, like source those. Oftentimes there's something like a small bolt that holds the wing on and they can't find it for a plane. So they can't fly the plane, and it costs them $1 million because they can't fly that plane. So he said, we'd like to offer a new service where we help them find these hard to find parts. So from that intention, it ultimately evolved into what's called the Right Now program, which is a platform that's like the Amazon for parts in the airline industry. So he's not just selling his air filters anymore. He's basically selling any kind of part. And a lot of them are hard to find. A lot of them are but now they're all easy to find because they can all be found on his platform. So he's created, just think about the value difference between this old factory selling commodity and now having a platform, like I call it a value hub for all the parts in the airline industry. And so he's just so excited about this. And by the way, he actually sells like 10 times more air filters now because there are more people coming to this platform to buy parts, and they just happen to buy his air filters on that platform. So out of a simple intention, which was to help his customers more find those parts, he built this amazing platform. And he does say that if he hadn't learned new factory thinking, he never would have got his head around having this kind of business, right? Because he would thought, I'm just air filters. Why would I do these other things? But I did tell him at the time, I said, Amazon started with books, and then now look all the things they sell, right? Imagine if Amazon was just selling books now. They wouldn't be anywhere near as big, obviously, than the way they are now, right? So he says, yeah, I could be like Amazon, right? So there's the first example. So one of the things that I've learned from giving my tech presentations is that some people say, I'm really busy right now, and this all sounds great, but where's the problem? Right? I've got a good business going on, right? And what I've learned in actually the 40 years doing this is that we all need to be constantly reinventing ourselves. If we don't do that, we can get into a lot of trouble. And there's 3 reasons why reinvention is so important. So one is that your customers are always changing. So what they want and need is always changing. So they might love what you have today, but maybe they need something else tomorrow, and suddenly they don't need what you have today or tomorrow. So that we can see that's been happening, for the last 40 years, really forever. But definitely a trend that always be happening. The second thing is new technology comes along and it keeps changing and altering the marketplace and how that all works and just how is business done. So I went through the entire time of the emergence of the internet, helping our clients do that. And obviously that changed the marketplace and how business is done. So now we're on the verge of another one with AI, right? It's going to change everything in ways that we can't anticipate right now, although we do know that it just is going to happen, right? And the third thing, which I think is the most important reason, is because you are always evolving and you're capable of transcending what I call your current value position, right? So if you are, like, say, metaphorically a plumber, right? You're actually capable of being an architect, right? But you're really comfortable being the plumber, but you really should be the architect, right? So, or let's say you sell hot dogs, but you really should be a gourmet chef, right? So at a certain point, you really need to go to that higher level. Otherwise, you're just, you're not achieving your full potential, but you're also not helping the world in all the ways that you could. So these three reasons are why reinvention is so vitally important, that it should be part of our DNA of our company. And I learned this lesson many, many years ago, back in the 90s, when I had Kodak Canada as a client. So we published all their publications. So I had a publishing company. We did all their publications, and I knew the president of Kodak Canada quite well. And one day I went with my photographer because he had to see him, because my photographer just bought a digital camera for $15,000, right? And it was kind of very large, like in that crazy picture there. And it was $15,000. I said, let's show it to the president of Kodak Canada. And I was really surprised by his reaction. Like, he said, oh, no one will ever want digital photography. They always want film. Film is so much better quality. I said, no, but it's got, and he said, it's so expensive. It's $15,000. I said, no, it's going to get really cheap. It's going to get way better. This is the future. Really, it is. He said, no, there's no way. Right. And I thought, at the time, I don't get it. Like, what's going on here? Incredibly brilliant guy, but he can't see the future there. Seems so obvious. And it was really about, he just didn't want to see it, right? He was so caught up in what I call old factory thinking. They just did not want to see that everything was about the change, and that if he Kodak didn't reinvent itself, that there was going to be trouble. And of course, we saw what happened with Kodak, right? But imagine if Kodak had said, okay, well, let's create a separate entity called Kodak Digital and keep working on that. They would have owned the market, but they didn't. They didn't pick up the ball. And it was because they were caught in what I call old factory thinking. So that was a very upfront lesson that I learned. Well, really, they learned the lesson. I just noticed it, them learning the lesson. So old factory thinking tells us these things. Now, this is the way that we've been thinking about business for 250 years, okay? So it's really, really ingrained in how we think, and we don't even question these assumptions, right? But it was really the way we were thinking during the Industrial Revolution. We're not in that time now. We're in a different time, but we're still using that thinking. And there's 5 things that old factory thinking tell us. So one is, our business is our product, and our product is our business. So we sell hammers. That's our business. What business you in? We sell hammers. Okay, that's a very easy definition. That's our identity. We're the hammer people, right? We're in a competition. There's a lot of other people selling hammers, and it's always going to be a competition. We always have to beat them out, try to figure out how am I going to beat out the other hammer companies. We can't raise our prices or we'll lose customers because, well, if I charge twice as much for a hammer, I'm not going to get any customers because they'll just go somewhere else, right? Can't raise my prices. We think the future will unfold gradually as an extension of the present, right? So there's not going to be any huge, big changes. It's just going to be like, a new iPhone comes out, a new faster computer comes out. Maybe we'll get to flying cars. I don't know. But generally speaking, our vision of the future is always kind of rooted in a present, right? And we don't think of it potentially being way different than it is now. And then the final one, which I guess is really the ultimate reason why most people don't do this thing, innovation and reinvention is risky. And so we can talk about it all day long, but when it comes down to doing it, we go, it's pretty risky. It's pretty risky, right? What if it doesn't work out, right? What if it doesn't work? What if we tried that and it failed? What if we fail, right? And so that's one of the main reasons why people just kind of shy away from even the idea of reinventing themselves. And old factory thinking doesn't help. So what are the benefits of new factory thinking? So I'm toying with you because I haven't told you what it is yet, but I'm just going to tell you what you could ultimately get from this. So one is it will help you stand out in your marketplace and attract more high quality customers. So we're selling hammers and we've got a lot of other competition. If we come up with something new to do, well, now we're one of a kind and we stand out, and that'll help us attract more customers. So, we're going to go beyond being the hammer company. It'll help you create new higher profit products and services. So we're going to keep our hammer, but we're going to create something more premium, more gourmet that we can make a lot more money from. So we can tell people you can have a basic hammer, or you can have this more advanced thing that costs, potentially hundreds or thousands of times more money. But we have two choices now. And that's very powerful because we're not raising our prices. We're just adding something more premium. The third thing is it will help you create a business that's a high value platform business. So I'm going to use that word quite a bit, is to turn your regular business into a platform business. So think of your business as a platform. Okay. That's got nothing to do with technology first at all. It doesn't have to use any fancy technology, but just to think of your business as a platform, which if you think of what's a platform, it's something that's a higher level. It's above everyone else, and it kind of has a wider perspective, right? And build a business that's based on what Apple, Amazon, Facebook, and Google and other companies like them are doing. We always think, well, no, I can't do what they do because I don't have all that technology, right? But it isn't really technology that is driving what they're doing. It's a different way of thinking, okay? So if we get that thinking straight, the technology these days, if you want to use it, is actually mostly free. Whereas back in the day when they started, they had to build it millions and millions of dollars. Now you can do all the things they're doing with technology that's almost free, if not free, virtually free. So lots of possibilities there. And then the other thing is it helps you take advantage of technology like artificial intelligence, augmented reality, which has actually become a quite a big thing. And most people are not even know what that is. The Internet of Things and quantum computing, among other technologies. Like there's lots of others as well, but those are kind of the highlighted ones. So we do want to get on that. Okay, so I've been giving a lot of presentations to tech groups called Dancing with Robots, which is another book I wrote. It's about AI specifically. So when I give that presentation, everybody will go, woo, okay, I can see now there's a lot going on with AI that I didn't know. And it's going to be a huge disruptor and, an empowering tool as well. These are things you really want to be able to take advantage of to the fullest extent. So this way of thinking will help you there. Now, second example, this guy, Nick Bloor. Okay. So I met him at a talk I gave in Boston at MIT. They had an entrepreneur conference there. So I had the great honor to speak there. And he came up to me and said, yeah, no, I've totally got an old factory. I'm from Australia and we cut grass. We do commercial property maintenance for all these big cities. We basically cut grass. Okay. And we're the biggest one in Australia. I said, well, that sounds good. He says, yeah, but it's unbelievably competitive. The margins are so thin, and every day I'm dealing with something, somebody fell off a lawnmower or something, and I got a lawsuit on my hands or whatever. Like you said, it's endless things that I'm dealing with. So I'd like to have a new factory. What would that be? So I said, okay, we're going to keep cutting the grass. Now we're going to think about this new entity, this new factory. And we ultimately called it the IVM program, which stands for Integrated Vegetation Management. Okay. So that has these two entities, cutting grass and IVM program. And what that was is he took the logistics software that he used for his company, and he gave it for free to all these cities in Australia. And once they got hooked up on that software, he said they used it for all their things, and it was free. He gave it to them for free. Then he said, well, now you can become a member of our program, which is, anywhere from $50,000 to $250,000. And when you remember that program, we're going to connect all your suppliers to this system. So we're going to integrate them, and they'll pay $10,000 a year to be on this platform. Okay. Anyway, because they gave it away for free, everybody went onto it, and they loved it. And then they said, yeah, we want to be a member. That would be great. And they all of them signed up for a membership, right? And at this point now, he has 320 suppliers on that system, 45 cities, 320 suppliers that pay $10 a year. And some of those suppliers are actually his old competitors. He's not competing anymore. He said, these are not competitors anymore. They're actually customers of mine now. And this business has like an 80% profit margin. Okay. And it's a much smaller group of people. He can run it from anywhere, and it's very scalable. Okay. At a certain point, he actually sold his old factory. And what he said to the new owners, he said, listen, anytime I have a member, I will refer them to you to cut the grass. And, but I just want 10% of what you're billing them. So he tells me now he actually makes more money from his old company than when he owned it, because that 10% is pure profit. He doesn't have to trade dollars or anything there. So he says, the great thing about this is he said, I used to get paid for cutting grass. Now I get paid when grass gets cut. I just don't cut it. All right. And he did say, just like Rick did, if I hadn't learned new factory thinking, I never would have thought of this. I wouldn't even have come up with this in a million years. I'd still be cutting grass. That's all there is to it, right? So like all the rest, they realized that the biggest innovation here that we're talking about is not technology, which is great, but it's not technology. It's an innovation in how we think. That's what's got to start. Everything in your business begins with how you think. And if you think a certain way, your business will be a certain way. If you think another way, your business will be another way. So I'm giving you another way to think. So what's the difference between old factory and new factory? Okay. Now, I wrote a whole book about this, so if you want to check it out, then you can learn more. But I'm going to give you the headlines here. So old factory thinking is product-centric, and new factory is idea-centered. So, we have the hammer company. That's the old factory. And then we're helping people build beautiful buildings. Okay, maybe that's the big idea there. We help people build beautiful buildings, right? Okay, the category captive is that we're in old factory. We're in the hardware industry, right? So we can't go beyond that. Really, we're just in the hammer business, but maybe more broadly, hardware. But in the new factory, it might be, okay, well, we're selling anything, right? Because we're a value hub now. So we're kind of being like Apple, right? They went from music to everything else. So, or Amazon from books to everything else. This is the trickiest part to get your head around. So yeah, they're still selling hammers, but they're also selling screwdrivers, and they're selling ladders, and they're selling ham sandwiches, and they're selling car leasing, and they're selling et cetera, et cetera. There's really no limit to what they could sell. They don't have to provide it. They just sell it. And that's the difference. So they make a lot of passive income there. Old factory is very physical and tangible, right? Everything is, our buildings, our trucks, our factory, our people, our computers, the value we provide is tangible. It's a thing that you hold in your hand, or a service that we do with our hands. Whereas new factory is more virtual or organized. There is no building, right? It's intangible. A lot of the value we provide, you can't actually see. You can't hold in your hands, but it's tremendous value there. That's another hard part for people to get their head around. That's why Blockbuster didn't buy Netflix, right? Because Netflix is virtual and intangible, and Netflix was physical and tangible, and they couldn't see that Netflix was a business, right? So those are the three key differences. And today's network marketplace, which I mean network, like really our whole economy is built on the network called the internet. This really rewards this kind of thinking, and it punishes the old way of thinking. So the writing's on the wall for old factory thinking for sure. So these are the key elements of new factory thinking. So I'm going to go through these, and we can focus on each one, and then I'll give you an example of how someone took that principle and turned it into an amazing new factory business. Okay, so So these are the 6 main elements of new factory thinking here. And let's just look at it. So before I show you the principles, the kind of process here that's extremely helpful, and I use this all the time in my business, is we say, we're not going to change our old factory, all right? So if you're running a taxi company, I'm going to tell you, don't change a thing. Just keep running those taxis, okay? But we're also going to set up a new factory. Now, in this picture, it looks like the building across the street, but it's really just across the street in your mind at first. But a separate entity, okay? And we'll call that the new factory. And then what would that be in this world now? In this world that we're in now, what could that be? And you might think of, well, a taxi company, we get that Uber or some kind of ride-sharing system, right? We're able to think completely differently now because it's a separate entity, all right? What we're not doing is turning our old factory into a new factory. We're not turning a candle into a light bulb, for example, okay? We're going to keep the two different, completely separate, but we're able now with the new factory to start thinking, oh, wow, what would that be? And generally speaking, I say spend 11% of your time on the new factory and 89% of your time on the old factory. There's a reason for those numbers, but I'll explain that later. But if that Kodak had done that, right? They kept their old factory running, making the film, but 11% of the time they spent on Kodak Digital, think where they'd be right now, right? It'd be unbelievable. So it's so simple, really. So, okay, so now that we have that basic idea, we're going to have a separate entity called new factory. We now think about big ideas. So big idea drives the whole thing, okay? Now, it's not a product, the idea, okay? It's something that you're trying to help people do that's new, better, different, that takes everything to a much higher level, all right? So I'm trying to help people come up with big ideas and build the future business of their dreams, okay? Now, I can do 1,000 things to help people with that, okay? So it's completely future-proof. So if I'm still alive 50 years from now, which is doubtful, but you never know, I will still be helping people with that, right? Because it's not going to go out of date no matter what happens, okay? And so what's that big idea? What's that big idea for you? Now, Bill Simpson, he's Old Factory is a management consultant in the field of inventory, okay? And he'd been doing that for a long time, but he had a lot of competition, and it was sort of a commodity in a way, right? And he was, I always say, well, it's like a brown paper bag. Yeah, there's nothing, you haven't given me any sizzle here, right? It's just kind of, I do inventory consulting. That's the story. So I asked him, I said, well, what is the ultimate thing you're trying to help people accomplish here? And he immediately answered me. He says, well, I'm helping them come up with a balanced inventory. Not too much, not too little. That's the outcome I want. I said, oh, you have the balanced inventory model. He says, yeah, I do. Okay. So he named it, okay, this intangible thing. And then he went out and he presented this to companies. He said, I'm on a basic level, I'm an inventory consultant, but on a more advanced level, I help companies come up with a balanced inventory. I have the balanced inventory model. I have a balanced inventory program you can go into. The very first 6 companies he presented to hired him. And they didn't hire Bill Simpson. They didn't hire his resume or anything. They hired it because they wanted to have a balanced inventory. And he was able to put that big idea in their head. And he was the only one they could go to get that, right? So he's built his whole business around an idea, not a service, right? And that's a whole different way of thinking about what you're up to. It doesn't take away the service. It's just a way to sell your service in a more effective way, right? Because it's about an idea. But it also gives them lots of opportunities now, for example, with AI, to use AI to help them create a balanced inventory. Like AI doesn't disrupt him. It just helps him do balanced inventory more, right? So that's a business based on an idea. The next thing is, instead of a new factory being product centered, like we sell hammers, it's customer centric, right? So if I'm selling hammers, I'm going, okay, who is my ideal customer that I would like to target, right? And you say, well, I have lots of different kinds, but really, I guess building contractors would be the best because they're the ones that are spending most of the money, and it's a business thing. So I'm going to go with, building contractors, for example. Okay. So then you start thinking about them and you start specializing in them, and you start saying, well, what are the big problems they have, right? All the different issues they have running a business like that, and think of solutions for them, which are mostly common sense at this point now, and then come up with all kinds of big ideas to help them with that, right? So customer-centered, focusing not on your product, but on who you're trying to help. So Rick Scruggs, Old Factory, he's a financial advisor. There's 400,000 of them in the United States, okay? And they're all doing basically the same thing. But he had decided, his new factory, to zero in on private business owners. In that market, there is about something like, they say, anywhere from 10 to $30 trillion of equity in those companies in the United States. And they're all going to transition over the next 20 years, okay? So he said, I'm going to go after that market. And I'm going to create a program called the Abundance Business Coaching Program. And so he goes out there. He says, look, I can be your financial advisor, but we also have this Abundance Business Coaching Program. And it's a process to help you make that successful transition from owning the company to, giving it to your kids to run or selling it to someone else. But, this transition is inevitable, right? So at this point, he has 46 members. He charges anywhere from $60,000 to $120,000 a year to be in the program. And this has been extremely successful for him, right? And it's also getting lots of clients to do all the financial service stuff. So he's selling life insurance. He's getting all the investment money. He's getting the group insurance business as well. But the key is that he focuses on private business owners. It's not something for everybody. It's for those particular people. And he identified such a huge opportunity there, right? Okay, the next thing is the value hub attitude. And this is actually one of the toughest things to deal with, okay? And the reason is because old factory thinking really tells us my product is my business and my business is my product. So I sell hammers, okay? And you just, somehow you can't get past that, right? So, let's say your salespeople go out there and come back and say, look, I know we're selling hammers here, but everybody actually wants screwdrivers. That's what they want now. And you go, no, we don't do screwdrivers. Forget it, right? We're hammers, So we're completely locked in and missing this maybe huge opportunity to sell screwdrivers because we don't identify with that. We identify with being hammers. Now, this might seem like a silly analogy, but this is the most common problem I've seen, and this has been going on now for 40 years, working with people, is that the business is their product is their business. And when I say, hey, you might be able to sell screwdrivers, they go, oh, no, can't do that. That's not what we do. I lose my focus, right? What are you telling me? Who will I be then, if I'm selling screwdrivers? Heaven helps if we start selling ladders or ham sandwiches or something, right? No. So biggest problem around. But look what Apple did. Now, back in the day, back in the 80s, I worked for Apple Canada. I was so interested in Apple. I went to the Apple store. I was hanging around there all the time. And they finally just gave me a job. And that evolved into being basically the spokesperson for Apple Canada as far as trade shows and things like that, right? So at a very young age, I was up on the stage introducing all these Apple products and stuff to people. That's one of the ways I got my business going. And so I knew that business intimately. But at that time, they were a computer company. Okay, and I would have said that. They're a computer company, amazing computers. But during the 90s, they almost went out of business, right? They had a lot of competition. Their product was expensive. They were struggling. So they had a meeting in 1998. And so they were trying to think, how do we sell more computers? That's the discussion. And then someone put up their hand and said, I think we should sell music. And what do you think you would have done if you were in the room and you had to vote on that? I can bet dollars to donuts that you would have voted no. There's no way we're going to sell music. That's not our business. We're not in that industry. We'll lose our focus. We need to sell computers, right? But they did it. They started selling music, okay? Now that's been successful in itself. Like millions, how much music have they sold? Billions and billions of songs. They're actually the most successful music company by far in the world ever. And they've never written a song. Okay. Nope. Steve Jobs wasn't writing music or anything. But the bigger impact of that was it broke the back of their old factory thinking. They suddenly became a new factory thinker because once they had computers and music, well, then there was no reason not to do phones, and there was no reason not to do watches, and no reason not to do all the other things that they do now, right? They have an ecosystem. They have a value hub. I just got their Apple Vision Pro, their augmented reality headset, and on and on and on, right? Now, the interesting thing with that, they became the biggest company in the world, for one, because of value hub attitude. But they also sell more computers now than ever. They sell twice as many as they did back in 1998. And the reason is because they have more people engaging in their ecosystem. And eventually they get to the point where they go, I need to have a Mac now instead of a PC. Okay. So by having this value hub thinking, they really liberated themselves from this very restrictive, we're a computer company, and it saved their business and also turned it into the biggest business in the world. And I tell people, I say, this is the way we all need to think. And it's the hardest thing to get past because our identity is tied to our product. And that's a big mistake. So instead, you say, no, I'm tying it to who I'm trying to help, right? So go back to the building contractors. And then I say, and I have this intention to help them build beautiful homes, right? And I'm going to be a value hub thinker. So therefore, I can sell anything, including screwdrivers, and it all makes sense now. Okay? And so this is why you can only really innovate if you use new factory thinking and you have value hub attitude. Otherwise, you're just trying to make a better hammer, which is not really innovation. Okay. All right. So Jeff Calibaba, some of you might know him. He's a tech chair, but he also have this business called Game Plan. All right. And his new factory targets HR executives, right? And their, CEOs, and helps them with HR, right? So on a basic level, they're HR consulting. With a more advanced level, they have the Game Plan HR program. And in that program, they have a store, a toolbox, and it's a value hub. Okay, so when you become a member of their program, it's called HROS, then he says, okay, as a member, you got access to our toolbox. And we have benefits companies in there, executive compensation, consulting, counseling for your employees, legal, executive search, wellness, culture, tech, and anything. And there's actually a much larger number of things there. And he makes money from all of those. So one of his members says, yeah, I need a benefits company. Okay, go to our benefits people, this other company. And he gets a percentage of every time that benefits premium is paid. Okay. So he says to me, it's amazing. I'm making money from benefits and I don't have a benefits company. I said, yeah, it's kind of like you're selling screwdrivers now, right? He says, yeah, this is great. And the customers really like it because they can get all of this from a one-stop ecosystem, kind of like Amazon, right? So why wouldn't you do this, right? The only reason you wouldn't do it is because you're using old factory thinking. Like, you're just stuck with, we only sell hammers. The next thing is the idea of intangible value, okay? And this is also hard to get our head around because when things are intangible, we often don't see the value in it, right? We go, I understand the value of, a cup of coffee, or I understand the value of someone coming in and cutting my grass, I guess. But intangible value that I can't see, and I always use Starbucks as the best example here, is that Starbucks said, we're going to get people to pay $5 for a cup of coffee. Okay. And the reason how they got people to do that is they pay 50 cents for a cup of coffee and $4.50 for all the stuff they get. Like they order from a barista, they're a member at Starbucks. They sit in a nice place and they work on their computer and stuff like that. And they order a venti, right? All these things that add up to being a special experience that gives them emotional value. So people are actually paying, let's say, $4.50 for the intangible value that Starbucks offers. The coffee is still a coffee, right? You could get a coffee at Tim Hortons, but But at Starbucks, maybe people feel like they're getting all kinds of other things, which they wouldn't necessarily be able to articulate, but they're willing to pay for. Okay. So intangible value, right? So Sarah Hodson has a company that does physiotherapy, the easiest way to say it. And she thought all along through her history of her business that we do physiotherapy, we have to have clinics, and we do physiotherapy. But about 2 years before the pandemic, fortunately, she developed a healthy habit model. And it's an approach to help people develop healthy habits. So not only do they heal back quicker, but then they stay healthier afterwards, right? So they started to have this other service where they were teaching people how to these healthy habits, and they started doing it online. Then the pandemic happened, shut down all their clinics, and they just went full bore on, come online. We're going to help you stay healthy during the pandemic. And this turned into a much bigger business, way more profitable. And so they've completely shifted now to intangible virtual business. More or less, they still have clinics, but their view now is that the intangible value is actually where all the money is. And it's also where the differentiation is, because there's obviously lots of physiotherapy clinics out there. Next thing is the virtual platform, okay? So a little more than 10 years ago, I had an office in downtown Toronto, 30 employees, huge overhead, a lot of hassles and stuff like that. I always thought that would be my vision of success. But at that point, I said, you know what? I don't want to do this anymore. I want to make my business virtual, right? So over the next 3 years, I converted my business into a virtual business with very, very low overhead. I can work anywhere, and I'm providing like 10 times more value. We make way more money. It's just been brilliant. And then when the pandemic happened, we were already all good. And so many of my clients and people I know said, you've been telling us to have a virtual business for so long, and now I need a virtual business. I said, well, at least the pandemic is telling you that, right? So a lot of my clients have really gone virtual here. And so one example is Ken Zantig, who is basically the birdseed king of Canada. He owns all the birdseed companies, and he's got this big granary in Hagersville, Ontario. And I've been there, and it's, you drive up and you can see it from miles away. It's this gigantic building. And he said to me when I write, he says, you know what, I'm a dinosaur. We're just doing birdseed, for goodness sakes. And he says, I don't want to be a dinosaur. So he created a new factory, which is called the Feathered Friends Club. And it's a virtual platform. And it's for anyone that loves birds and has a bird feeder in their backyard. And his goal is to have 1 million subscribers on that platform, free subscribers, okay? And he says, when I get to that point, then I'm going to sell it. And that people buy my company are not going to be buying this big plant, really. They're going to be buying this list, this network of people. That's going to be way more valuable than the building, right? So he totally sees that. So, at this point, he's got about 25,000 subscribers in there, and he just keeps adding them on every day. And it gets easier to add them on as time goes by. And he's done all the other things, like he has a value hub. He sells bird feeders from another company on there and so on. But he says a lot of younger people really want to work with him now because he's doing what Facebook and Amazon are doing, and it's exciting, right? All right. The other benefit of this is passive income. Who doesn't hear about passive income? We all talk about passive income. I want to make passive income, and yet very few of us ever do, because we think our business is about cutting grass, and we get paid for cutting grass. I got to cut the grass to get paid. So our thinking really gets in the way of that. How do I passive income? Like, sounds good, but how many people have ever done it, right? And so I did, right? So I have about 100 companies in my value hub, and they've all made agreements with me that if I send them a customer, I will get 10% or thereby something like that for that. So we actually make a lot of passive income by bringing people together, basically, right? It's the easiest thing really to do, but most people don't think to do it, right? So I call that my 10% club. So an example is Peter Sturkster. He's got 10 lumber stores in the Niagara region of Ontario. And, basically he sells lumber. Okay. But he says, way more than that. I said, yeah, but basically it's a lumber store because it says Turkstra Lumber on the building. Right? Anyway, so they created the Build It Better program. So any of their customers can sign up for that. So they have a free version, and then they have ones that cost $500 and $1,000 to be a member of that. And so when they're members of that, they get access to this value hub of all these companies, all these contractors, all these suppliers, and so on. The company has these coaches that talk to the members, and then they refer them to all these other companies, right? And so the most lucrative thing they do is for referring people to contractors to build homes, to build decks, to do, landscaping or whatever. And they make like 10% of everyone, what all those contractors are up to. So they said, that's passive income, right? And the contractor collects the money, okay, and then gives that money back to them under contract with that 10%. So they're not getting in the middle of that transaction. They're not taking the risk of it. It's just all gravy, right? And he said, I never would have thought of that. Okay. And he said, and the great thing is we have 12,000 members now in our program. Okay. So one of the key things here, it's implicit through how I'm talking is that all these companies have turned their customers into members. And that's a big deal. It's like Amazon, they have customers and then they have Prime members, right? Prime members spend 3 times more than non-members do. And that's what these folks have found as well. So that brings us back to, are you ready to create your big idea and build your new factory? I don't know why anyone would say no at this point, but I do know that old factory thinking can fall in there. You say, really busy right now. We'll get to it later. Okay. Really like the ideas, but really busy right now. Lots of excuses. Your mind will play tricks on you here. Okay. That's why I say we're just going to divide up our minds into 2 categories here. Okay. So we're going to have the old factory, I guess 89% of your time. Like that's the majority of your time. I'm not telling you not to focus on that, but 11% of your time on your new factory. So when I had that business, right, in the downtown Toronto, 30 people and everything, I said, what's my virtual business look like? So I went across to Starbucks because it was right across the street. And I said, I'm just going to make this my virtual new factory over here. And I'm going to think about I'm going to build my virtual business over here. Okay. And so that's what I did. I spent 11% of my time over at Starbucks. And then I went back to my old factory and, kept the lights on and so on. But I was working towards the future. Okay. And then at a certain point, I just sold my old factory to my partner. I got that 10% deal with him. That was great. And then I moved out of there and into a whole different and way better world. Okay. And this is what we all need to do ultimately, not just because it would be fun, not just because it would, be lucrative. It's that we have to. Okay. This is what I mentioned at the beginning. We have to do this because the world is moving on. It's moving on. I did a talk recently. I call it the whitewater way. I said, it's like whitewater rafting. If you whitewater raft, ever done it, you have to keep paddling. Otherwise you can't steer. So if you think of the river as like just time, it's the marketplace changing everything. If we don't paddle it so basically go faster than time into the future, we're going to lose control of our boat and we're just going to end up on the rocks. Okay. And that could be very bad. So we got to keep paddling into the future, creating that new factory. The second thing is think of it as an airport. Okay. That's the best way to think of this value hub is that you're just bringing people and resources and things together into a hub. Okay. This analogy has spawned so many amazing businesses that I've worked with, is that, it's like an airport. So you have your airline, like WestJet, and then you have the airport, which is like WestJet owning the airport. Imagine the benefits that WestJet would have if it owned the Calgary airport or the Toronto airport. Like think about the power of that and how that would be a different business, right? Because they would be working with the other airlines, they would be making money from the airlines, and they'd have different kinds of revenue sources that they don't have now. And it would just help their existing business too. So think of the new factory as like an airport. The third strategy, really ultimately kind of the most practical one, is that we want to think big and start small. olfactory thinkers think small and start big. They have a little idea. Oh, I got a new product idea. And then they develop that. They get investors, and, they're going to have the better paperclip or something. And they build a big factory. And then they find out, oh, nobody wants that paperclip, or, people don't even use paper clips because we're not even using paper anymore. Okay. So, so they thought small and started big. So instead we think big. It's like, I'm going to have this $1 trillion business just for fun. I'm going to I'm going to have a company that has millions of people every day sharing videos with each other. And I think we'll call it MeTube or something. And great. So millions of people doing that. How do I start? Well, I got to get one person upload a video and just get someone to look at that video. Well, that's basically how YouTube started. They were thinking big. They had this big idea, and then they started small. One person uploaded a video, and you can actually watch it. It's an 18-second video from the San Diego Zoo. It's the very first video ever loaded onto YouTube, and that was the humble beginning of it. So this is why this is very practical, right? You can just say, I'm going to think big. Why not? Just why not? But I'm going to start small, very practically, because I only got 11% of my time to devote to this, but I will start. Okay. So one last example here is Mike Lowry. He created the hyper-intelligent building process. And he's helping building owners turn their regular building into a hyper-intelligent building, which means that it can actually be managed through virtual reality, augmented reality. It's the building is potentially run by artificial intelligence. It keeps everything running very efficiently. When we first came up with this idea, his employees really couldn't understand this at all. Okay, they really did not see it, but gradually they did. And recently they got a contract from federal government for $25 million to turn federal buildings into hyper-intelligent buildings. So all of a sudden now everybody's a believer in this. And the key thing was that they didn't even have any competition for this because no one else does this. Okay. And that's the key to this, that you want to have a thing you're doing that no one else does. That's the ultimate competitive advantage, right? So this is just onward and upward for Mike Lowry. This is my airport. This is how I've designed my business. So you can see how it looks like an airport, right? I'm not going to go into all the details of this, but this is what I do with people is I help them design their airport and all the elements of it. And you see, it's not linear, is it? It's more spatial. So, we have spatial computing. On the weekend, I shot spatial video. We're really moving into the spatial economy. Hey, maybe that's the name of a new book. I don't know. But this is a different way of thinking about it. So this is the map that we create for all our clients is what's the map of their new factory airport, right? So that's how I operate. And what I do with people, if you're interested, is I have this session. All the ideas that I showed you there were created in this free session I do. So it's a 60-minute session. Hundreds of tech members have done it and come up with some amazing ideas. So a lot of people say, I don't know if I have one. I said, no, it's there. You just need to go through this thinking process with me. And out will pop your new factory big idea. Now, it'll just be version 1, but it could lead to something really big, right? So we're going to really think big in that session. Specifically, we're going to use the new factory thinking to create that. Then we're going to determine how to use that big idea to get more customers, make more money, and build the future business of your dreams. So we're really going to have that vision now. This is what could happen with this, right? And then we're going to develop a plan to get your big idea off the ground. So we're thinking big, and then we're starting small. That's why this is so practical. We've worked with 5,000 companies. Okay. So over this time, we've really figured out how to take out all the wasted time and to really help people innovate. So you can use that QR code. I did send a link there. So I'm encouraging you to schedule it with me now so that you don't forget. And nothing ventured, nothing gained, right? So, and there's no fee, right? I'll mention that again. So no fee for doing this. And I hope, I really look forward to talking to you about it because I love doing these things and every idea is different. And it's just so fascinating to see what people can come up with and how excited they get by the big idea they come up with. They just get unbelievably excited. So hopefully we can do it. All right. So there you go. That's my presentation. New Factory Thinking 2030. So we've got a bit of time now for potentially some questions if you have any.
Well, thanks so much, Bill. Really appreciate all the insights you could share today. Yeah, a couple questions come up here that I'll just sort of fire away. So the first one, with rates of change getting more and more rapid, how often do businesses have to reinvent themselves? You can make that jump first, but then is there sort of a best practice or a cadence that you should follow in order to kind of go through that process of reflection?
Yeah, so it's really, we want to get to the point where it's just essentially a continuous thing, okay? That it's not a project so much, it's more of a habit, okay? And the reason being that once you have your big idea and you've designed your new factory as an airport, it is kind of a container. It's a future-proof container that within it, you can just keep innovating. So if you think of Apple, right? They just now have this value hub. They have this ecosystem. So they're just continually innovating within that, right? They don't have to think of it as a project suddenly. They're doing innovation now. It's just that it's just a natural order of things that they're constantly thinking, well, what other new value could we provide folks? And they have lots and lots of ideas that they never do, but they have so many ideas that the ones they do are, usually quite successful. So it's a habit.
The habit. Excellent. Well, thanks so much for that answer. A little bit more of a logistical question here coming in through the chat. So the big idea conversation, is that one-to-one or can teams participate in that?
Yeah, either way, you can do it just one-on-one, or you can bring your team into the conversation for sure. That if you want to do that, that's great, because then everybody's contributing to coming up with that.
Right. Excellent. Yeah. Awesome. Great. Another question here. So what are the risks of some of the current technology we have becoming redundant down the line? And how do you kind of manage that risk while you're looking to, or you're exploring new factory thinking?
Yeah, good one. That's a good question. So when I wrote the book, Strategic Marketing, the Digital Age in 1995, that was the first book on internet marketing in the world, actually, is I had a chapter called Technopia. And what I was talking about was that people start with the technology first, like they say, I need the internet, right? Internet. And then they're trying to figure out something to do with the internet. That's a danger, because you could just end up creating a white elephant there. So when it's like with AI, right? It's like, AI, great, I'll use AI. But no. If we go through this thinking, who am I trying to help? What's the big idea that I'm trying to help them with? Have a value hub. Well, now you say, okay, well, AI, how could it help? Right? Can it help? Maybe I don't need AI. I don't need it. Or maybe it will help. So it becomes more of a tool as opposed to the point, right? So that, for example, AI, though, I think the key there is to learn as much about it as you can, to be using it as much as you can, because it will help you come up with big ideas, okay? But the big idea won't be AI. The big idea was, there's these people, they have this problem, and AI can help me solve it.
Excellent. Well said. All right. Last little question here. When is it time to let go of your old factory, or is it ever time? So you talk about that kind of parallel of building your new factory in tandem with your old factory. But is it ever time to kind of cut the cord on the old factory?
Not necessarily. So I did talk about a few that did sell. I sold my old factory. But a lot of people also keep it, right? They, I'm going to keep that hammer factory. Why not? Might as well. So it all depends on the marketplace and what you're interested at that point. But the new factory, what it does is it gives you an insurance policy. Okay. Like it's insurance policy into the future. And at a certain point, let's say people don't need hammers anymore, or the market's dwindling or whatever, or you're just losing interest in it, then you can let it go, either sell it or just close it up, or no, you just keep going with it. It's fine. Right. So it just depends on the, your inclination, and also, what the marketplace ultimately dictates, I think.
Yeah. Excellent. Mm-hmm. Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Bill. No more questions for you right now at this point, but we really do appreciate all of your valuable insights today on new factory thinking. And thank you to everyone who tuned in live for this TEC Canada Deeper Insights webinar. If you missed it, or if you'd like to go back and rewatch some of the fantastic information that Bill has shared with us today, you can find a recording of this webinar at TEC Canada's website, which is tec-canada.com, or on our YouTube channel. And with that, we here at TEC Canada wish everyone a great rest of the day. And thanks again, Bill, so much. We really do appreciate you coming on here.
Yeah, it's been an honor. Thank you so much for giving me the chance.
Yeah, no worries. Thanks, everyone.